In this improved second generation guise, Kia's ProCeed further sharpens its proposition in the affordable coupe segment, with sharper looks, extra technology and the option of clever 3-cylinder petrol power. A more sharply orientated top-turbo GT flagship variant aims to snare performance people, but it's the lower-powered ProCeed models that'll make the numbers. Cars blessed with reasonable running costs, spacious practicality and a very good after-sales package. Potentially then, there's a lot to like here.
Forget what you thought you knew about Kia and check this car out, the improved second generation version of the brand's ProCeed Coupe. It's a pretty smart looking thing, isn't it? Especially in this top GT guise. But then you'll have been expecting that if you've kept half an eye on this fast-growing South Korean maker over the last few years. This, after all, was the brand that brought us the funky Soul crossover, the slinky Sportage SUV and the cute Picanto city car. And before all of those, the first generation version of this ProCeed. Launched back in 2008, this three-door coupe version of the Ceed family hatch was a turning point for Kia. The first model it had made that had that want one factor. It was a shocking departure for Kia dealers, used to the dull family fare that back then characterised the rest of the company's model lineup. And it paved the way for a desirable range of cars that have since doubled the company's worldwide sales. And the only problem, though, with raising expectations is that subsequent products must meet them. This second generation ProCeed, originally launched in 2012, certainly tried to do that and sure enough offered a strong combination of styling, speed and practicality in its original form, further establishing Kia as a mainstream brand, every bit as credible as Ford, Vauxhall or Renault. Judging by the best of those standards, though, the Mark II model ProCeed wasn't quite as complete a product as it really needed to be to properly take the fight to coupe rivals like Vauxhall's Astra GTC and Volkswagen's Scirocco. The lineup's entry-level petrol engine was old tech and inefficient, and so was its automatic gearbox technology. Kia also lagged a little behind its rivals in terms of media connectivity, and critics reckon that the top GT model should have been a little sharper to drive. Having listened to all of that, the Korean company thought a little harder, spent a little more of its development budget and came back to the market in the autumn of 2015 with the much improved ProCeed model we're going to look at here. What's changed? Well, humbler petrol models get a freshly developed 1-litre 3-cylinder eco-turbo engine. The diesel variant now has one of those efficiently slick-shifting dual-clutch automatic gearboxes. And this top GT sporty model gets retuned suspension and steering for a sportier feel. All of this is garnished with slightly sleeker exterior looks, plus buyers get a minor cabin upgrade that improves the entertainment setup. Will it all be enough, though, to keep this car competitive? Let's find out. There are two kinds of ProCeed driving experience, and it's very much horses for courses. If you'd opted for the top turbo GT version we're trying here, there's everything needful for the full-fat performance driving regime. Recaro seats, stainless steel pedals, red stitching on the steering wheel, and even on top versions, a TFT instrument screen showing torque, turbo boost and engine coolant temperature. There's even a GT button on the steering wheel that gives you a sportier engine note. Most ProCeed customers, though, opt for one of the volume versions aimed at people who want the style of this car without the extremes of speed that could potentially come with it. These people almost certainly won't mind the relatively modest performance on offer from the 5 mainstream engines that Kia offered at the launch of this revised second generation model. By far the most interesting of these is the 3-cylinder 1-litre eco-turbo petrol unit that the company has developed to take on the similarly downsized 3-pot units now available from rivals. Like the most familiar engine of these, Ford's 1-litre EcoBoost power plant, this ProCeed's 1-litre TGDI unit comes with a choice of outputs, either 98 brake horsepower or 118 brake horsepower. Since both of these options develop the same 171 Nm torque figure, it's no surprise to find there's not much of a discernible performance difference between the two out on the road. Although the Korean brand insists that the ProCeed variant improves the rest to 62 miles per hour time from 12.4 seconds to 10.7 seconds. Kia, like Ford, has chosen not to bless this 3-cylinder engine with a balancer shaft to improve its refinement, so there is a certain amount of buzzy thrumminess under hard acceleration. Still, the sensation isn't unpleasant, and it could even be said to add something to the character of the car. The only drawback with that 1-litre TGDI option appears to be the money it costs Kia to build it, meaning the need for the more affordable ProCeed variants to continue on with the substantially less efficient, normally aspirated petrol engines that were previously offered in this car. For buyers at the foot of the lineup, that means a 98 brake horsepower 1.4 that makes 62 miles an hour in 12.3 seconds en route to 107 miles an hour. Or a little further up the range, there's a 1.6-litre GDI petrol unit with 133 brake horsepower that improves those figures to 9.8 seconds and 118 miles an hour. Try that 1-litre model though, and you won't want to bother with either of these. Although, of course, in all of this, we're assuming that as a buyer, your priorities will lie in petrol power. Probably we shouldn't be, given that a significant proportion of ProCeed customers prefer to focus their attention on diesel power. Here there's only one option, but it is a good one. Basically the same 1.6-litre CRDI unit that Kia offered in the original version of this car, but with power boosted this time around from 126 to 134 brake horsepower. This means that 62 miles an hour from rest now takes 9.5 seconds en route to 117 miles an hour, while a decent 280 Nm torque figure helps with pulling power through the gears. It's this 1.6 CRDI derivative that Kia chose to use for the launch of its optional 7DCT dual-clutch automatic gearbox. This 7-speed unit is much more efficient than its 6-speed auto predecessor, and it's one of those clever dual-clutch transmissions that's able to seamlessly select the next gear before you've even left the last one. With its steering wheel, gear shift pedals and silky smooth change pattern, this is definitely a step forward. In this case, as I mentioned at the beginning, we've failed to resist the urge to try the most potent ProCeed model in the lineup, the GT. This car uses essentially the same Gamma 1.6-litre GDI engine featured in the normally aspirated 133 brake horsepower ProCeed model, but here a turbocharger raises power by 51% and torque by 61% to deliver 201 brake horsepower and create a much stronger level of performance. How much stronger? Well, it's not enough to make this ProCeed GT feel really quick in the way a Seat Leon SC Cupra or even a Golf GTI might. But then those are pricier and more powerful cars. If you adjust your frame of reference towards more comparably powered and priced rivals like Vauxhall's Astra GTC in SRI 1.6 Turbo 200 PS form or Seat's Leon SC in FR 1.8 TSI guise, then you would be being realistic. Certainly, the ProCeed GT's stats are very comparable to those of cars like these, with rest to 62 miles an hour taking 7.7 seconds en route to 143 miles an hour. That's performance on par with cars like Toyota's GT86 and Subaru's BRZ, and it's also enough to match the speed of a pricier Volkswagen Scirocco GT 2-litre TSI. Forget the top trumps comparisons though. It's probably more relevant to tell you that in this ProCeed GT, more than 80% of the 265 Nm torque output is available nice and low in the rev range from under 1500 RPM. That makes overtaking quick and easy. The important 37 to 60 mph increment is dispatched in just 5.4 seconds. In the original ProCeed GT model, gunning the engine like this didn't induce much of a feel-good factor. This time around though, as I mentioned at the beginning, Kia has added in what it calls an electric sound generator, one of those sound symposer systems that works through the audio speakers to fill the cabin with a sportier noise as you accelerate. Much as we might disapprove of this concept, we have to admit that it does work well in this instance, making this Kia feel more like a proper performance car. You activate the sound symposer system via this GT button on the steering wheel, and doing so also gives you a choice of options with the TFT display in the instrument binnacle. Select between an analog speedo or a screen that shows you speed numerically, along with engine torque, turbo boost pressure and coolant temperature. This GT variant has been dynamically sharpened up as part of the changes made to the revised second generation ProCeed lineup, with a sports suspension package that gives the car a little more cornering bite, but still retains that comfortable ride that pleased us so much in the original version. Don't get us wrong, Kia still has a little way to go in terms of its understanding of cutting-edge drive dynamics. I mean, there's nothing like the fluency you'd get from, say, a Ford Focus ST or a Golf GTR, for example. But the South Koreans are definitely narrowing the gap to class leaders of that kind. The more powerful and effective brakes fitted in this revised model help in that regard too. All that will be of interest if you habitually drive on your door handles, but the vast majority of customers looking at mainstream ProCeed models don't. They'll continue to like the fact that the ride and handling balance achieved by humbler versions of this car is very much aimed at day-to-day usability rather than on-the-limit cornering. It's a well-developed package that, even when provoked, steadfastly refuses to do anything unexpected, cornering confidently with well-suppressed body roll and plenty of grip. That's also where you'll notice the torque vectoring system that's been added to this car to help with traction through the bends, transferring power to the front wheel that can best use it. The long wheelbase helps ride quality, with only lumpy B-roads showing up any significant flaws in deportment. Although the 6-speed manual gearbox isn't the slickest, the steering's nicely direct, even if it doesn't offer a great deal of feedback. No, not even on this GT model. Avoid entry-level trim in a lower-powered ProCeed, and you can try and do something about that using Kia's Flex Steer system. It offers the driver a choice of normal, comfort or sport steering modes. Something fun to experiment with for the first few miles, but ultimately not of much use, given that comfort is a bit too light and sport a bit too heavy. GT models do without this feature. Overall, a seat at the wheel of this car is a very pleasant place to spend your time. The driving position is excellent, the seats and the wheel feel good, and all-round visibility is better than many rivals. Refinement's pretty good too, thanks to copious amounts of extra insulation this time around, careful aerodynamics, and endless little touches that portray a premium brand style attention to detail. Along with the compliant ride, it all makes for a family hatch that'll be well suited to longer trips as well as shorter ones. A car with more in its repertoire than you might expect, just as the ProCeed always has had. Back in 2008, opinion was divided as to whether the first generation ProCeed model was actually a coupe at all. Many simply saw it as a three-door version of the ordinary Ceed family hatchback. And some still view this second generation version in the same way, but it's certainly much sleeker and much more of a body style in its own right, with the roof, the body sides and the rear end completely redesigned to suit a coupe clientele. And the result was billed by the brand as its most emotionally charged vehicle to date, penned in the words of Chief Design Officer Peter Schreier to show performance and dynamism from every crease, angle and curve. Now, whether or not you agree with that, you can't deny that what we have here is certainly a smart piece of styling, created by Europeans for Europeans. You get the same length, width and wheelbase as you would with the 5-door Ceed, but in a more appealing looking package, positioned 40mm lower to the ground. The sportier feel is further emphasised by this improved Mark II model's more aggressive bumpers and its narrower front grille. It also helps that this central B pillar has been moved 220mm back to suit the line of this model's longer doors, which is why the side panels and the side windows behind that point are also unique to the ProCeed, as is the roof. This all contributes to the sleek profile created by this rising belt line, the low roof line and the narrow glass house that comes framed by a chrome surround. The wheels are smart too, even on mainstream versions where you get standard fit 16 or 17-inch alloys. With this GT variant, there are these classy graphite grey finished 18-inch rims. Add in tight shut lines that wouldn't look out of place on the Lexus, and you got yourself a design that's clearly had a great deal of money spent on its execution. At the rear, there's another revised bumper, and on this GT variant, this incorporates these diffuser-style cut-out sections at its corner, housing the reflectors. This sits below more voluminous, restyled tail lamps that now feature LED technology on most models, and further up, the integrated roof spoiler offers a neat finishing touch. Time to take a seat at the wheel, where the changes made to this improved second generation model, things like chromed highlights around the air vents and the electric window switches, really are quite superficial. More significant, though, are the enhancements to the bright centre dash 7-inch colour infotainment touchscreen that you get on top variants. Though it still lacks the kind of smartphone integration and functionality that's now commonplace with some other brands, there is a Wi-Fi option, and the navigation technology you get has certainly taken a welcome step forward. Partnership with TomTom now enables the system to offer things like speed camera location warnings and live updates on traffic and weather, plus fast, short or economical route planning and full UK postcode entry. Collectively, it's all somehow enough to add the extra veneer of quality and technology that the original version of this car rather desperately needed, especially if you can stretch to a plusher ProCeed. This GT version has Recaro front seats with part leather, part suede upholstery. There's also red stitching for the leather on the steering wheel, the gear knob and the door inserts. Even if you can't stretch to all this tinsel, you shouldn't find too much to complain about in terms of the basic cabin design. Look around and pretty much everything you'd expect in an affordable coupe is present and correct, complete with subtle red ambient lighting and all the usual soft touch slush moulded surfaces. The detail stuff's well thought through too, so latches operate with a quality click, handles slide back with a damped sigh, and there's discrete lighting around the USB and aux in ports. The digital facial graphics have drop shadows to make them more attractive, and the warning chimes are discreetly muted, although we could do without that musical melody that accompanies every entry and exit. As for getting comfortable, well, it's easy to get the height adjustable seat and the reach and rake adjustable steering wheel into the perfect position. Our only comment would be that the wheel does seem to have more than its fair share of buttons, and more we think than we've seen on any wheel since we tested a Ferrari 458 Italia. Anyway, through it you view the usual 3-dial instrument binnacle that now includes turn-by-turn instructions for the sat-nav that on top models like this one are shown on a smart high-definition LCD colour display. Further information is delivered in a narrow panel of digital readouts at the top of the centre of the dash. Look around and visibility out of the cabin isn't bad at all, given the relatively rakish coupe shape. This car is certainly easier to see out of the back of than rival Vauxhall Astra GTC or Volkswagen Scirocco models would be. But just in case you run into any trouble, Kia has included rear parking sensors. Build quality from the Slovakian factory justifies that long warranty, and practicality is well thought through too, with a roomy glove box and door bins, an overhead compartment for your sunglasses, plus 2 cup holders in a section behind the gear lever and a large storage area in front of it. Getting into the rear is made easier by front doors that are 270mm longer than those in the 5-door seat, although that might be a problem in tight parking spaces. Once there, thanks to a wheelbase length identical to that of the 5-door seat, space for a couple of adults is reasonable on all but the longest journeys. That's providing occupants don't mind the slightly claustrophobic feel created by this high window line. 3 children could also be accommodated without too many complaints, and that's something that isn't possible in a rival like, say, Volkswagen Scirocco. Out back, there's the same 380-litre boot that you get on the 5-door model. Useful touches include a bag hook, a 12-volt socket, these tie points on the right of the boot area, and a detachable nut that, when connected, will hold small items in place. Lifting up this boot floor panel reveals a useful compartmentalised area for keeping valuables out of sight, although this is only made possible by the absence of a proper spare wheel. Push forward the 60/40 split folding rear bench, and once again you'll find that Kia has achieved impressive levels of practicality with this car. The 1,210 litre total capacity you get when the seats are flattened is only 93 litres less than you'd have in a 5-door Ceed. This ProCeed might not be quite the bargain it once was, prices having risen by around 30% over those charged back in 2006. Having said that though, it still offers a lot for your money. Pricing for mainstream ProCeed models sits in the £14,500 to £21,000 bracket, with this 3-door coupe model offering a £500 model-to-model saving over directly comparable variants in the 5-door Ceed range. For this top ProCeed GT model, you'll need a healthier budget, just over £23,000. This GT represents the pinnacle of ProCeed ownership, while the range line below it is angled at 2 categories of coupe buyer. The first kind of customer would like this GT variant but can't justify its asking price or its high insurance rating, and in any case doesn't really need over 200 brake horsepower under their right foot. For these people, the GT line variants introduced as part of this revised Mark II model range should be ideal. You get a look and feel that's very much like this top version, but it comes priced more affordably and mated to the 2 best engines in the mainstream range, namely the Pokia 118 brake horsepower version of the new 1-litre petrol eco-turbo unit and the upgraded 134 brake horsepower 1.6-litre CRDI diesel. We'll need around £19,000 for the petrol version or around £19,500 for the GT line diesel, a variant which, for a premium of just under £1,400 more, can be ordered with Kia's latest DCT dual-clutch automatic gearbox. Not everyone, though, wants an overtly sporty look. Perhaps all you need is a stylish 3-door version of Kia's Ceed hatch, pitched at an affordable price with a sensible engine plumbed in beneath the bonnet. If so, then as a ProCeed buyer, you're probably going to be looking at one of the mainstream SR7 or 2 grade derivatives. At the time of this revised second-generation model's launch, the most affordable segment for this part of the range included Kia's older tech 1.4 and 1.6 litre normally aspirated petrol engines. Relatively inefficient units that, if funds permitted, we would be tempted to try and avoid. Start your search from around the £16,500 price point and you can get yourself a ProCeed variant fitted with a detuned 98 brake horsepower version of the infinitely preferable 1-litre eco-turbo petrol engine. Or for another £1,000 you can get yourself that 1.6-litre diesel, again with the option of the DCT auto box if you want it. Onto the way the ProCeed value proposition stacks up against obvious rivals in the affordable coupe segment. Well, its job has certainly been made easier by the fact that there aren't many. Comparable cars of this kind, like Hyundai's Veloster, Honda's CR-Z, Volvo's C30, the Mini Coupe and Peugeot's RCZ are all no more, with little prospect of replacement. And at the time of this improved second-generation ProCeed model's launch, the original version of Renault's Megane Coupe was in its run-out phase, with remaining models still priced at between £1,000 and £2,500 above the price of this Kia. So, what realistic options are there to pitch against this car? Well, back at this Mark II model's original launch in 2012, we'd have pointed you towards Vauxhall's Astra GTC, but since then, the Griffin brand has rather priced that car out of contention. An entry-level petrol-powered 1.4-litre GTC model is around £1,700 more than an equivalent ProCeed 1-litre eco-turbo 118 brake horsepower variant. Doesn't sound too bad. Go on, though, to compare other mainstream models in the GTC lineup with their ProCeed equivalents, and you could be looking at a price difference rising to £5,000 or more. Volkswagen's Scirocco is even more expensive. In entry-level 1.4-litre petrol form, the price difference to that equivalent ProCeed 1-litre eco-turbo 118 brake horsepower variant is just over £2,000. Go for a Scirocco diesel, though, and the price difference to a comparable ProCeed CRDI would be over £6,000. Although, to be fair, the German contender does offer a little more power. But we don't think there are going to be too many Volkswagen buyers looking at this Kia. It's more closely matched, we reckon, against a less well-known choice in the affordable coupe segment, Seat's Leon SC. Now, in base petrol or diesel form, the Seat is priced between £1,000 and £1,500 above this Kia. It's not much of a looker though, and that is crucial in this fashion-conscious market niche. Okay, let's say you're looking at this GT variant and you want to know how it stacks up to obvious rivals. But which rivals? If you want a directly comparable, similarly powerful, affordable performance coupe, well, there just aren't that many options. A Toyota GT86 or a Subaru BRZ could, in theory, be yours for the same kind of money. But for a plusher version of either of those, equipped to this Kia standard, you'd be looking at having to find around £2,500 more. As for other alternatives, well, you could save around £1,000 and get yourself a Vauxhall Astra GTC SRI in 1.6-litre turbo 200 PS form, or save nearly £2,000 and get a Seat Leon SC FR 1.8 TSI. Neither of these two contenders, though, are quite as well equipped as this Korean model. Go for a comparable Volkswagen Scirocco, the 2-litre TSI GT variant, and you'd have to find almost £3,000 more than would be required for this Kia. Otherwise, you'd have to look at hot hatchback models that are really more comparable to the 5-door Seed GT version of this car. At first glance, the Ford Focus ST is around £500 less, but in comparably specified ST3 guise, it could actually cost you well over £3,000 more. A comparable Peugeot 308 GT 1.6 THP, meanwhile, would be around £1,500 more. Finally, I will mention that Hyundai's i30 Turbo uses the same engine featured in this Kia and is available in a 3-door hatch guise that would save you around £500 over the cost of this Kia. That's not enough of a saving, though, to make Hyundai's rather forgettable contender a tempting option. Enough on price and market comparisons. Let's assume that you've decided on a mainstream ProCeed model and you want to know exactly what's going to be included for your money. Well, a pretty reasonable amount as it happens. Kia doesn't bother with the entry-level 1 grade that you get on the 5-door Seed hatch, so the range starting point lies with an SR7 trim level that gets you 16-inch alloy wheels, reverse parking sensors, powered heated mirrors and rear privacy glass. Inside there's leather trim for the steering wheel and the gear shifter, all-round electric windows, Bluetooth phone compatibility with voice recognition and music streaming, air conditioning that also cools the glove box, and a decent quality iPod-compatible DAB stereo with a CD player. With an SR7 spec ProCeed variant, though, you're stuck with the rather feeble old-tech 1.4-litre petrol engine. So most buyers of this model are more likely to be looking at Grade 2 trim level, which offers a much wider choice of more appealing power plants. Highlights at this level include LED daytime running lights, cruise control, power folding mirrors and the flex steer system that allows you to adjust steering sensitivity. If you can afford to go further, then the final mainstream trim level is GT line. Now this gives you the same kind of look and feel that you get on this top-of-the-range GT performance model, but for a lot less cash. That means an exterior styling pack with black high-gloss mesh grille, ice cube LED daytime running lights and a sports-style interior. It's this spec level that you have to have if you want the 7-inch touchscreen infotainment system that includes a rear-view camera, satellite navigation and Kia's useful package of TomTom-powered connected services that'll give you updates on traffic, speed camera locations, weather forecasts and a local search function. This top GT version includes all of that and then adds a package of more seriously sporting touches. Red brake calipers peek through lovely graphite-finished 18-inch alloy wheels, while inside you get proper grippy Recaro seats that are heated and trimmed in part leather and part Dinamica microfiber. There's red stitching for the gear shift, the door trim and the D-shaped sports steering wheel, and niceties like stainless steel pedals, cruise control and an automatic defog system. As for options, well, we'd want to look at the usual practical stuff, things like mud flaps, carpet mats, tow bars and aluminium roof bars that will take cycle and ski carriers. For the boot, a rubber boot liner and a rear bumper protection strip would be useful, as potentially would be a cargo separator net, especially if you're carrying pets. As for aesthetics, well, there are some nice alternative 16 and 17-inch alloy wheel designs, and you can specify stainless steel effect door mirror and side door mouldings. There's a universal handset mount onto which you can clip your smartphone to keep it in plain sight. And finally, as a parent, I would want the rear seat entertainment cradles that can clip onto the back of the headrests and take tablets. That'll keep those youngsters entertained on longer trips. On to safety. Now, no car in this category can afford to compromise in this area these days, and this one doesn't, gaining a full 5-star rating in NCAP tests. You get the usual Isofix child seat fastenings and a tyre pressure monitoring system, along with twin front, side and curtain airbags. And to ensure that hopefully you'll never have to use them, there are all the usual expected electronic driving aids present and correct. So, ESP stability control, of course, along with VSM, vehicle stability management, to help maintain directional stability when you're suddenly braking or rapidly accelerating on varying road surfaces where there's different traction available at different wheels. Plus, the ABS brakes have a brake assist system to make them more effective in emergency stops. And those will be advertised to following motorists by emergency stop signal flashing brake lights. What's missing from that list is the kind of autonomous braking system that most rivals now offer, either as an option or as standard, the kind that scans the road ahead for potential accident hazards and can, if necessary, brake the car to avoid them. Now, Kia has developed this technology for its Sportage crossover, but rather surprisingly chose not to include it in this facelifted second-generation ProCeed model, at least at launch. Nor can ProCeed customers specify the sophisticated electronic safety aids available at the top of the Ceed range. Things like a lane departure warning system, a blind spot detection setup and a rear cross-traffic alert system. Expect all these things on next-generation models, though. You might never have expected to be handing over a sum in the £15,000 to £23,000 bracket for a Korean coupe like this one, but then you might never have expected to be able to own a sporting car of this kind with such a wide range of capabilities. In a 1.6-litre CRDI diesel ProCeed, for example, you've a model that can reach nearly 120 miles an hour, yet one that, when driven more sedately, can return nearly 75 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and under 100 grams per kilometre of CO2, all while comfortably seating 4 people and swallowing 380 litres of their luggage. That's a difficult combination of virtues to replicate in this part of the market. The efficiency element comes courtesy of Kia's Ecodynamics technology, which includes all the expected features, things like low rolling resistance tyres, an alternator management system, plus the brand's ISG, Intelligent Stop and Go system that cuts the engine when you don't need it, waiting at the lights or if you're stuck in urban traffic. As a result, a diesel engine ProCeed should be able to achieve an operating range approaching 900 miles from a single fill of the 53-litre fuel tank. Or, to put it another way, it's a car in which you could travel from London to Italy without refuelling. Go for the 7DCT automatic version and you're still looking at 67.3 miles per gallon and 109 grams per kilometre. A massive 25% improvement on the running figures of the 1.6-litre diesel automatic model in the previous pre-facelifted model lineup. The 1-litre eco-turbo petrol model also gets ISG start-stop, using it to achieve 57.6 miles per gallon and 115 grams per kilometre of CO2, or 113 grams per kilometre in 98 brake horsepower guise. Start-stop even makes a reasonable difference to the relatively inefficient 1.6 GDI petrol engine, which manages 52.3 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and 124 grams per kilometre of CO2. The more potent turbocharged 1.6T GDI 201 brake horsepower petrol unit used in this GT performance version manages 38.2 miles per gallon and 170 grams per kilometre of CO2. And that leaves only the budget-orientated 1.4-litre petrol model, the only ProCeed variant that continues to do without ISG start-stop. Kia's position being that this derivative is aimed at private buyers who won't want the cost of this extra technology. That's why the budget 1.4-litre petrol model's returns are distinctly unremarkable by modern standards, 47.1 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and 138 grams per kilometre of CO2. As for that 7-year or 100,000-mile warranty, well, since it can be passed from owner to owner, it should help the impressively strong residual values. It is worth pointing out, though, that the bumper-to-bumper complete car warranty is only 5 years, with the extra 2 years of cover being restricted to the engine and gearbox. You might also want to note that roadside assistance cover is limited to 1 year, but you do get a long 12-year bodywork warranty. Servicing is required once a year or every 20,000 miles for both petrol and diesel versions. Bear in mind though, if you go for the 1 litre Eco Turbo model or the GT TGDI petrol turbo, it's 1 year or every 10,000 miles. Either way, maintenance costs can be kept down by opting for Kia's Care 3 or Care 3 Plus servicing packages, which offer a fixed cost and inflation-proof servicing plan for the first 3 or 5 years, something which can also be passed on to subsequent owners. Insurance groupings start at Group 8 for the petrol 1.4, for the 1 litre TGDI Eco Turbo petrol model. In 98 brake horsepower guys, you can Group 9. If you go for the same engine with 118 brake horsepower, that rises to Group 12. The 1.6 litre GDI petrol is rated at Group 13. For the 1.6 litre CRDI diesel, you're looking at ratings between Groups 13 and 14. Finally, this TGDI ProCeed GT petrol model is rated at Group 30. In buying an affordable coupe, you might expect to have to select between style and practicality. In other words, a choice between a slightly smarter version of a 3-door hatchback with decent space or a lower, slinkier model that'll be eye-catching in your driveway but pretty useless for either rear seat passengers or luggage. This ProCeed model, though, has historically shown itself to be pretty adept at combining style with sensibility, and still is in this improved second-generation guise. In fact, we reckon this car is the real deal. Most versions are reasonably priced and all look great and are well equipped and solidly built with an unbeatable after-sales package. Plus, we're impressed by the fizzy but efficient 1 litre Eco Turbo petrol engine, which certainly recommend you try in this updated model. What more do you want? Extra driving involvement? Well, you want that in the top GT performance variant we've been trying here. A car which, in its original form, ought to have been a little more rewarding. This revised version, though, is usefully improved in this regard. It feels sharper and it sounds so much better. Well, the brand hasn't dialed up the desirability of more mainstream ProCeed models in this regard, but then it really didn't need to. Red-blooded enthusiasts aren't the only people who buy coupes. Take, for example, young customers who'd like the racier look but don't want to be saddled with high insurance premiums. The people specifically being targeted by this car in its GT line guise. Or older folk who would be attracted by the idea of a sporty-looking car but don't want one with an uncomfortable and impractical low-slung feel. Both these kinds of buyers will find in the affordable ProCeed variants a perfectly sensible proposition, but one with more than just a touch of the flair that you'll find in this top GT flagship model. In short, what we have here is, once again, a career move for the better.